Hey, good evening, everyone. David Valente here with the Political Deep Dive. Thank you for joining us this week. You may have noticed that we've had some issues with Facebook this week. Just wanted to let everyone know that I caught a ban, basically just a ban on going live. I want to thank the People for Liberty group for letting me use their stream this week and getting up on that for allowing us to be on Facebook. But for the next 4 weeks, I won't be able to do broadcast live on Facebook. Um, and unfortunately, it's kind of a funny thing. I posted, and it was over a meme that I posted over Thanksgiving. And if you'll remember, a lot of governors were telling their citizens that you couldn't have a certain number of people over for Thanksgiving dinner. And I posted a meme of Jeffrey Dahmer, the famous cannibal serial murderer guy, saying, "Don't tell me how many people I can have for Thanksgiving." I thought it was funny. I think a lot of people would have thought it was funny, but the people at Facebook disagreed. They pointed that out to me. I said, they said you can fight it or you take it down. I said, go ahead and take it down. No one's going to remember something I did over Thanksgiving. No one's going to miss it. Nothing said about the consequences for having it taken off. So it was apparently not being able to go live for the next month. So I'll take that as it comes. I've actually added a couple of or actually one partner. Twitch is our new streaming service that we've added this week, and I'm glad to see people come over to that. We're on YouTube, we're on Twitter as well. And again, thanks for the People for Liberty folks for letting us use their stream this week, their website this week. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce our guest this week. It's Daniel Fishman, who is the former executive director of the National Libertarian Party, who now is the executive director of a group called People for Liberty. And as you would guess, it's a organization that's dedicated to setting a world set free in our lifetime. I always screw that up. To a world set free in our lifetimes through the use of education, action, and advocacy. Mr. Fishman, thank you for joining us.
Hey, Dave. How's it going? Thanks so much for having me on the Political Deep Dive.
Hey, no problem. I've been really excited about getting on the show because it's, one, you're a good friend of mine, and you're actually the person who introduced me to StreamYard and getting on podcasting and streaming and things like that. So, you're kind of the father of this.
Well, it's good that I have some lasting legacy. I'm happy about that. On the other hand,
say, Dave, I'm your father.
Well, and let me say that, cut your hair. No, sorry.
I do need to get a haircut. I tried to this week. No one's cutting hair this week. Well,
dude, come on, shave. Where's my clippers? I mean, I've been doing this for a while now, since March. I used to do it all the time. I would just shave my head with the clipper set on one every 6 months, whether it needed it or not. And then when I took the executive director job, I'm like, I should keep that weirdness in check for a little while. Don't let them know how crazy I am right away. But then COVID happened and it was perfect. So
yeah, there you go, man. Well, so tell me about your new gig. What led you to get to People for Liberty?
It's funny. I was planning on taking a break. I did 2020 was a long year. We went through a lot of stuff. 2 conventions, ballot access, fundraising with, this huge crash in the economy. It was, and then, the nature of the job is that, people are always angry at me. And that's not a place that I like to be. I mean, I know I should be more inured against that, but I felt it all. I mean, I felt the anger, I felt the unhappiness, and it certainly weighed on me. And so, when it was over, I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to step away from the Libertarian Party for a while and take a break. I'm a tech guy. I had an idea for a tech startup. And so started looking at that, but I was going to take a couple months off. And then Lauren Postler contacted me, and she's the founder of the People for Liberty. And they had done the Let Her Speak campaign, which, I think that had a lot of traction. A lot of people caught on to that. And it was really well done, well executed. Hey, Casey. and it really Casey was the brains behind the Letter Speak.
Yes.
And Lauren was the organization behind People for Liberty, and the combination made it go huge. Joe Jorgensen might have been a little involved in the Letter Speak movement as well. But so essentially Lauren contacted me and she's like, Dan, this is who I am. And very impressive resume. Entrepreneur in residence, teaches entrepreneurism at Rice and University of Houston, University of Texas. And also coming from the tech startup world, she gave me a pitch that I recognized as this is a model for success in the real world. And in particular, there's two things about it. First, there's the organization, the split up of how we are. And People for Liberty is really three different companies. The first is a 501c4, which is a social welfare group. That's the People for Liberty. There's also a super PAC, People for Liberty Incorporated, which is it does super PAC things. It's designed to spend money. Part of our goal is that we're going to give money to libertarian candidates and to the Libertarian Party itself. But then there's also a company called the Firewall Company that sits in the middle. Firewall Company is a data storage company that allows not-for-profits to have their data stored and accessed for free. In return for that, because nothing's really for free, right? The Firewall Company gets access to the data. So it's three different organizations. However, what we want to do is use that company to be in the customer acquisition business. We are selling liberty. Okay. In order to do that, we want to acquire customers. We want to find the people who want to learn more about liberty. And then on the other side of it, we're an incubator. So if you were, a guy who had a successful liberty podcast, we would want to find a way to encourage you to do that better, figure out a way to monetize it, but also figure out a way to categorize it so that when people come into us and we acquire a liberty customer through all the variety of methods that we're doing, we're able to look at them and say, you know what? This is a person who would like the political deep dive. Let's send them a message about this. This is a person who would like the, Adam versus the man. Let's send them that link. Finding a way to organize ourselves, categorize ourselves using industrial level best practices for customer management, customer identification, marketing. That's what convinced me. I'm like, this is the stuff that the party needs to be done, but the party can't do itself because the party has all these other things to take care of. Candidates, ballot access, stuff like that. The acquisition of the Liberty customers, I think People for Liberty is going to do an excellent job on that. And I was very excited because that was something that I wanted to do. People will remember that one of the things I talked about a lot, pretty much my single focus for the first year I was in, membership. And, I'm very proud of the fact that we increased membership 50% in 5 quarters. I think that's going to be a record that's going to be hard to beat. And we increased fundraising as well. I want to keep up at that. I want to spend a lot of focus of bringing people into the movement. And it's important to me that I distinguish that the movement isn't necessarily just the party.
Sure.
There are people of good conscience who are our allies in liberty issues, and we need to find a way to embrace them. We need to say, we're with you on this. And so, like one of the things all the time, people will talk about the fact. So very early on, when I was still in Massachusetts in Boston politics, I went to meet with Black Lives Matter there in Boston. And, we talked about the issues that we had in common: criminal justice reform, ending stop and frisk, things that, are natural allies with these people. Now, are there some people somewhere in the Black Lives Matter organization who are Marxist? Yes. You know what? There's some people in the Libertarian Party who are also Marxist.
Exactly.
It's sort of, no matter where you go, you're going to find people who have, differing views. But it's important that we demonstrate, we be the change that we want to see in the world. And the biggest change that libertarians want to see in the world is that we want everybody set free. We're not arguing for us. We're not arguing for our liberty. We're arguing for you being able to live the life that you want. Because if you see me fighting for that, you're going to fight for me too.
Sure. I mean, that's the one thing that I think is severely lacking within the movement is the ability to create coalitions, the ability to actually seek out coalitions, because people think that just because I'm seeking out a coalition, say with, there's a Democratic straight state rep that I worked really well with while she was in office, working on criminal justice reform, working on cannabis reform, working on ballot access reform. These are areas that I could work with her. I was very happy to build a coalition with her on those things. And I said, there are pieces that I won't be able to move forward with you on.
Right.
That we will disagree. But if you need my support on cannabis, criminal justice, ballot access, you know where to find me, and I will be one of your biggest advocates for those things. And people, it rubbed some people the wrong way in that they focused more on her stances that I didn't agree with. And to me, I'm like, I don't care. That's her belief system,
Yeah.
and she can do that. I'm going to work with her where I can work with her.
Yeah, and it's
I'm on the
critical.
other side.
It's critical what you're talking about, that idea of coalition building, because everybody has some instance where they feel like the government has done them wrong. The government has restricted their liberty. It is the greatest commonality in our political experience. And in many ways, it is the founding experience of the American experiment. Government did me wrong. So finding a way to put all of those things together and build coalitions around whatever the issues are. And think about it, right? It wasn't that long ago that legalizing cannabis seemed like it couldn't happen. And then in 2016, cannabis won more states than Hillary Clinton did. That's an astonishing statistic.
It is.
And it happened because people found ways to work together. And even in Massachusetts, I will tell you that we legalized in 2016, but there were two competing bills. And the one that I supported was not the one that got passed. The one that I supported was sort of the Darryl Perry version. Darryl spoke about it on the stage in 2016, where he said, I read through the Massachusetts general laws, and there are no laws about tomatoes. I think that marijuana should be regulated like tomatoes. Now, there's some regulations around there, right? You can't spray tomatoes with poison and then sell them to people. That's reasonable.
Yeah.
But
don't tell me how to live my life, statist.
Right. Right, exactly. Well, it's funny because we should, at some point in time, let's come back to euthanasia and talk about that as a liberty issue. Sure. But there is so the other bill that was passed was one that was much more corporate. It established a cannabis commission and all sorts of, sort of bullshit laws that you can't open up a cannabis store unless you have $1 million in the bank and stuff like that, which essentially it's bullshit.
Okay? Well, because it makes it that the people that actually have experience in selling cannabis prior,
they're
never going to be able to do it.
The people who are hurt the most by the drug war are unable to benefit from the drug peace. It's insane.
Yeah.
We respect our veterans and everything else, but the veterans of the drug war, no, we shit all over them. And the problem, there's all sorts of problems with that, but it does mean an end to arrests from cannabis. It allows home grow, which Libertarian Party of Massachusetts started an excellent program called Overgrow and Share. So you're only allowed to have 6 plants per adult, 12 plants max per household. So we would just grow, and then once you got something good, you would clone it and you would just give it away all over the place. So we were trying to, a marijuana plant in every house. That was our goal. We built it off of the William Jennings Bryan in the Cross of Gold speech.
Exactly.
Said a chicken in every pot. When we said, okay, a chicken in every pot and pot in every house.
Exactly.
Anyway, but that was coalition. We worked together with people across the state, and it happened. We changed the state, and it is freer now than it was. Hopefully someday we'll get to the spot where there is no cannabis commission and I can grow as many plants as I want in my house. Love to get there, but I'm not going to let perfect be the enemy of done.
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk about a little bit more about People for Liberty. There are 3 pillars that really serve it. So education, advocacy, and action. Talk a little bit about that.
So education is one of those things that we're going to provide some of that. But mostly what we want to do is through the incubator program, find the educators who are out there and find a way to teach them how to make their content good. Because we believe, but it's a great example of that. In that, your show has gotten better every week. I think you would happily agree with that.
Yeah.
I don't mean that as a dish on your show or anything like that. The more we do it, and so giving people an opportunity to do that, and like that's one of the things about it. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and extend this offer to you now. As long as you're banned on Facebook, you're welcome to broadcast over the People for Liberty Facebook network, because that's what we want to do. We want to be an incubator for your show. And then when the time comes and you've got your audience and you're back on Facebook, go back and broadcast on your page. And hopefully a lot of the people who found you through us will keep watching your show. Well, that's what we want to do, is we want to have that. And, we believe in the open market for education. Okay. So education comes through a variety of different forms, podcasters or, bloggers or meme lords. We have this incredible meme creator on the People for Liberty staff, Princess Rivulet. She is awesome. She is a flat out genius.
Yeah.
No other way around to describing what she's able to do. And the people that she reaches are people that are not reached by, a talking head in a picture talking about, the really gory details of, this is how we won the election, stuff like that. So we want to have that broad thing for education. Then advocacy is another important thing. Excuse me, recognizing that, the liberty movement has to be willing to advocate for everybody. Okay. It's not about just saying that we're only in favor of liberty for these people. I have a saying, you've heard me say it before: Republicans and Democrats talk about being big tent, but that's a terrible thing. Libertarians think
that is a fantastic.
It's a great quote. Thank you, Holly. Republicans and Democrats talk about having a big tent, but if you think people ought to be able to look up and see the stars, you're a libertarian. The idea of a tent with walls that contains you, that's not libertarian. And so our advocacy has to be for people to go and find the way that they want to go. And sometimes, some people are going to head south. They want to head south. That's not the way we think it'd be. It doesn't matter. We should support their advocacy of trying to make the world free, even if it's not the thing that we do best. We want to provide a broad set of tools. So one of the other things that we're going to be doing is we are going to be creating, I said we have this incubator program. We're going to have some of the most dynamic content creators in the libertarian parties on our staff to assist people with making their content better. So we're going to have a program where people can come in and they're doing advocacy. They get to consult with name not revealed yet, or name not revealed yet. And those people say, hey, your message is okay, but this is how you punch it up. This is what you do. It's essentially, I'm trying to think of the analogy of it. You understand where I'm going with this. We're going to have mentors and coaches to get things better. And then the last aspect of what we want to do is finding the people who want to be involved in the liberty movement and giving them a nice place to land. There's a phrase that I had originally attributed to Ovens O'Brien, but apparently it's much older than her: the libertarian macho flash, which is described when a libertarian meets somebody who's not a libertarian and says, let me show you how libertarian I am. I'm just kidding. I'm not going to do that. But that's the libertarian macho flash.
Band, man.
Exactly. But that is the libertarian macho flash. This idea that, you're scaring away the people who want to do that. We don't want to do that. So People for Liberty has about 50 odd Facebook groups. Democrats for Liberty, Second Amendment for Liberty, Black Voters for Liberty, Women for Liberty, LGBT for Liberty, all of these things. We have this wide variety. All these groups are moderated. They all have at least 1,000 people in them. Many of them have more. And we're actively trying to grow all of those groups. And as we go out and acquire people in the outside world, we bring them in and we say, this is the group that we think you would be in. Christians for Liberty. All these things say, here's a great place where you can learn more about the liberty movement in a place that we think you'd feel more comfortable about. And then, if you sign up for our newsletter, which peopleforliberty.org, sign up, we will publish content from across the board, all of the different liberty groups, so that you can see in the newsletter what's the conversation that's happening right now in Homeschoolers for Liberty. Maybe that's something you want to get involved in, something like that. We want to provide the broad audience so that people can see everything that's happening in the liberty movement, and recognizing the fact you don't have to get into the liberty movement and day one say legalize heroin. Awesome. That's a fantastic. Thank you for showing that.
Yeah.
That is our homepage, recently redesigned by the incredible Matt Hudson.
Yeah, it's a great webpage. I really like it.
Thanks. Matt did Joe Jorgensen's webpage as well. And full disclosure, he did my auditor. He was the media director for my audit campaign in 2018.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
Okay.
a lot of exciting stuff. And then I'll tell you another thing, actually. I'll give you a preview. Go to, you got it typed in on there already, peopleforliberty.org/legislation.
So
you're going to have to type it. I don't have a link for it yet. I'm showing you deep linked stuff that isn't available to the public. So people who are watching the political deep dive are getting a real inside view into some important stuff.
And they can see how slow I type.
That's no, because you did the right thing. You're sharing a tab. You're not sharing the screen.
Oh,
so we can't see that.
Yep. There we go.
So one of the things that we're getting to ready to launch is an organization of all the liberty opposing legislation in the country. Right. It just happens to spell out LOL. But what we want to do is across the country, there are these state laws, local laws, whatever, that are just Martha Bueno was just on talking about marijuana laws that are going through the Florida legislature right now. One of them is going to put a cap on THC allowed in cannabis that's sold at 10%, which is like insane. I mean, if you force me to eat a whole bottle of gummies to get 10 milligrams of THC, I can do that. I'm built for that sort of competition. However, it's a stupid law to make. People need to know about that stuff. And so what we're doing is we are having people, if you know of any liberty opposing legislation, enter it into our database here. We're going to notify all our members in the right area, send out alerts to them, let them know, hey, this is going on right now. And then at the bottom, we've got a thing where, you know, if there's already organized opposition, we want you to contact that opposition. Okay. Even if that opposition is somebody that we're not necessarily politically aligned with, this is about coalition building. You know, it's a critical thing that we say, okay, there's already somebody working against this marijuana this illegal cap on THC, work with them. But if there's not anybody else, we're going to give you a page to host your opposition thing to it. If you scroll down to the bottom.
Here we go.
Yeah, keep going. So see that thing where it says a link that says a basic form? The very bottom of the page. Left, nope, up. Left. Last paragraph, it says, if there's no organized opposition, keep going down below the form. Yeah, basic form. Click on that. Up 2 lines.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah. So that's good note for me to be a little smarter about it. So this is an example of a page that we'll set up if there's not an opposition page. So this is the page that we would have set up to oppose the ratification of the 18th Amendment. So come in, we let whoever does it. So let's say, you know, whatever is the issue, Dave, you find one where they're talking about banning Catcher in the Rye again. You put in a link for it. We say, okay, there's no opposition. We want you to organize it. We've got a form here. We'll put in the pitch and everything like that. Now, anybody who wants to volunteer in your area to fight against the banning of Catcher in the Rye, they sign up here. We send you their contact information. So we're helping to organize people who are going to fight against liberty opposing legislation. So this is an example of one of the things we do where we're going to go across the board and find things. And legislation is one of the easiest places for us to reach out and form coalitions with other people, because there's a lot of legislation that we can work with Republicans on. There's a lot of legislation that we can work with Democrats on, because Republicans and Democrats, it doesn't matter what the bill is, they're going to fight against the other party. So let's do that. We just happen to be the party of permanent opposition. So chances are, if it's a Republican bill, we're opposed to it. If it's a Republican bill increasing the size of government, we should be working with the Democrats to block it. If it's a Democrat bill increasing the size of government, we should be working with the Republicans to block it. Excuse me.
So originally, the reason why I wanted to get you on here is you wanted to talk about consent culture, and we're talking. We see now in the headlines today. We see Mario, or not Mario Cuomo. I can always keep calling
Andrew Cuomo.
Andrew Cuomo is in a bit of a bind because of his past behavior and desperately holding on to office.
And he's a great example of everything that's wrong about the way our culture is.
Yeah.
Because we have this expectation that if it's okay, if it's what you want, you get to touch somebody else. Right? Maybe you're not physically assaulting them, but touch them. Something like that. That's not okay. Complete consent culture means agreeing that nobody should be touched without their consent. Now, a lot of times you have a relationship with somebody, you don't need to have specific affirmative consent. When you and I meet, we don't need specific affirmative consent to hug each other.
Yeah.
We just hug it out. That's what we do. But if I had never met you before, it would be inappropriate for me to come up and say, hey, grab you up in a big bear hug, something like that. It's got to be something. And, there's a friend of mine, Ashley Shade, is running in North Adams, and she is famous for her big hugs. Yeah. However, she always asks first, never pick somebody up without it. And that's the critical thing about it. Now, the thing is, of course, consent culture is actually bigger than just touching people. Complete consent culture is that nothing should happen to you without your consent. Nobody should be able to take something from you. Nobody should be able to put something into your body. Nobody should be able to take something out of your body. Nobody should be able to make you go to school. Nobody should be able to make you do anything that you don't consent to. And if we push that, because right now people are getting the idea that our culture is so bad that, even supposedly woke people, a year ago, Andrew Cuomo was the darling of the woke people, right? Look at what a great job he's doing, blah, blah, blah. But he was always this guy. He was always this guy, and the people around him knew it, and they excused that behavior. They allowed him to violate people's consent because they said, well, it's really important that we get all these other things done, but it's not okay. It is not okay to allow that sort of behavior to happen. It's not okay to make excuses and say, oh, in this circumstances, boys will be boys. Trump's just going to do whatever. Cuomo's just going to do whatever. It's the same thing. There can be no tolerance for violating consent.
Exactly. And the thing that got me about it is, watching one of his press conferences after all this broke, and the number of people excusing it and using the idea that, well, Trump got away with it.
Bro, that's terrible.
I mean, okay, so it's okay that he gets away with it because Trump got away with it? Like, what? How, you've said
the United States got away with Vietnam, so
yeah. I mean, you've set women in the workforce back decades just for that position alone.
Right.
Now it's because, we're excusing basically bad men behavior.
Yeah, exactly it. And it's the thing about it is that it's not bad male behavior, because I think if it were just that, people would be willing to call out more. It's the idea that you want to say that there are some situations in which it's okay to violate people's consent, because that's what our modern government is predicated on. Yeah. The idea that government knows best and it's going to do some things that you might not agree with. That 18th Amendment prohibition thing, and showed a picture of the states that ratified it. So New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut did not ratify prohibition, but they still got screwed because 38 states did. And so they lost the right to have alcohol. How insane is that, right? That, and these are big states, right? New York and New Jersey, at least, are very populous states. Certainly back in 1918.
Yeah,
exactly. And so to have those states lose the right because other people voted, it comes down to one of our core principles. There's a very dark meme, and it bothers me. It's not appropriate to spread around, but It's a picture of a frat party, and there's one girl and four guys, and they're all just obviously wasted. And the caption is, should they vote on what happens next? Can't be like that.
That is dark, but
It is dark, but it makes the point, right? It makes the point of, you can't vote you shouldn't be able to vote to violate somebody's consent.
Exactly.
We have this, de Tocqueville talks about in Democracy in America, this idea of a tyranny of the democracy. And we have that. And that's one of the things that, really concerns me now, is that they might do away with the filibuster. And, there's an argument that the filibuster is too easy, but the senators represent 40% of the country. Now, let's push aside the argument. Do they really represent 40% of the country? They represent 40% of the states. And so in that vein, that's not a small minority. That should be enough to defend against a violation of people's rights. I am waiting for the Libertarian presidential candidate. Maybe it'll be you, Dave, that when they run for office, they say, I'm running on the idea that I'm going to veto every bill, whether I support it or not, and make them compromise to get it through. Because you guys can get that 2/3 vote. Great. That's it. But I'm not going to pass any legislation that you don't agree upon. I'm never going to raise the debt ceiling. I'm going to veto all of those. But I'm not going to agree to pay anybody. I'm not going to honor any debts. I'm going to veto every single thing as president. And you guys have to find a way to get the bills that you all can live with. Because even 67%, quite frankly, for me, is too low of a percentage. I'd like to say 80%. If we can't get 80% of the people to agree on something, then we probably shouldn't make a law. But it affects, there's some things for me, let me set off the people now. I'm a minarchist. I believe that there are some laws that our society benefits from. I believe in laws that prohibit animal cruelty because I think that there's a strong correlation between animal cruelty and eventual criminal activity.
And again, that's consent too. An animal can't consent.
Right. Exactly. Exactly right. Although we did just have a conversation about shopping for pork. However, they can't consent to being tasty. Right?
That's true.
However, the same sort of thing. There are all sorts of other laws that we could talk about, laws to protect children. And it's it's a dangerous line because we are talking about the fact that, there may be a point in time which we say, what you're doing is not disciplining your child. You are beating your child. And at that point, society has an obligation to step in. It's tricky. I think that if you say 80%, that's okay with me. Something that 80% of people would agree upon, look, that's abuse. That has to stop.
It's interesting that you mentioned 80%. There are things that 80% of the people that do agree on. And there's a chart out there showing that it doesn't matter what people agree on in the country. Where depending, it's okay. The line goes like this, and then there's a line like this. It doesn't matter what people agree on. It's about the spending that is made on behalf of that issue.
Right.
They'll be just as likely to pass something that's unpopular versus something that is popular, just basing on the money.
And, I definitely agree with that. Oops, sorry. I definitely agree with that. There is, that's part of the consent culture part about it too, is that, nobody should be spending your money that was taken, without your consent on something that you don't agree with. And that's one of the real problems I have with almost everything that you look at. So we talk about, the ACA. This is one of my things to talk about. Affordable Care Act, sometimes called Obamacare. The end goal of having healthcare available for lots of people, I agree with that idea. Okay. I want people to have healthcare available. The question is, what am I willing to do to make that happen? What I'm not willing to do is to take money away from people who don't want to donate to that cause. Mm-hmm. I don't want to tell people I know how to spend your money better than you. And so I can contribute myself to support, a healthcare pool. In fact, I do some of that already, right? I am in a bunch of voluntary insurance groups. where, we are in this group together to spread out the risk. I used to be a special education teacher. The kids that I taught at the end of my career were severe autistic students. These were kids who were going to be institutionalized, and they were really beyond the capacity of a parent to take care of. Nobody is prepared for a kid like that. Nonverbal, biting, scratching, no adult daily living skills, stuff like that. Kid like that takes a village. And it takes, for me, I'm happy to voluntarily contribute to the pool to spread out the risk and say, you know what? I'm willing to put in $100 a year or $1,000 a year to make sure that there's a system so that there is an educational system in place for a kid like that.
Yeah.
Because unless you're very wealthy, you can't afford to take care of a child like that. And so I don't have any problems with sharing that. It has to be done voluntarily, though. I'm not going to tell people that they have to do that because, if you have a sick parent that you have to take care of, and this year that's where all your money is going, I'm not going to say, yeah, you got to put $1,000 into this pool as well. Take care of your parent.
Yeah.
You figure out what's done best. If I can't convince you that our cause is worthwhile, then I got no reason to force you to do it.
Exactly. And that's the thing that when people talk about taxes, and usually it's the folks that say the taxes are the price we pay to live in a civilized society.
Right.
I always point out that, war is not really civilized.
Right.
I'm a big, I'm not a proponent of war at all. I think war is just a failure of our ability to talk through issues. Especially
Isaac Asimov said, violence is the last refuge of the incompetent.
Exactly. Yes. But when I give my money to the federal government, when it's taken from me,
right,
I no longer have a say in how that's spent.
Right.
So if it's very important to me that my local community is taken care of, if it's very important to me that we provide goods and services to homeless people or sick and indigent people, I don't have that ability to make that determination.
Right.
A lot of that money is going to go to bomb people in countries that 90% of the people have never heard of,
right?
And cause disease and pestilence. I mean, look at what's going on in Yemen right now.
Yeah,
it's terrible. Absolutely awful. And when you give your money to the government, you lose that ability to say where it goes to.
And the thing is that the government doesn't have to be like that. I mean, they could break it down and say, you know what? This is the military bucket. And if you don't want any of your money to go into the military bucket, then it won't.
Yeah.
This is the social bucket. If you don't want any of your money to go into the social bucket, it won't. And it would probably even out because the pro-military people would be like, yeah, I'm putting everything in, then screw the social programs. Exactly. Yeah. Whatever it is, if we had that sort of voluntary payment of services, people would be a lot happier and we'd be a lot less angry with each other because we would be respecting each other's consent. And the thing is that, and so I had a post about this I made a meme, and I'm not good at making memes, but it was Cuomo and his hands on the user exactly, and talked about consent culture. And somebody in the post said, the comparisons between taxation and rape are just gross. So I want to recognize that, as a man, I have a privilege that I don't have to fear sexual assault as much as other people. However, I really do believe the slippery slope idea that when we compromise requiring somebody's consent for anything, we weaken that first level. Yeah. And so there's a lot of things that I say we have to have complete consent culture. We have to have complete freedom of religion. We have to have complete freedom of the press, because once we start down that road of limiting these things, we open ourselves up for real censorship, for real violation of consent.
Sure. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about your time as executive director of the Libertarian Party. We'll go into some Libertarian Party issues as well.
All right, here goes. All the bodies will be revealed.
Strap it in there. All right. So yeah, you were executive director for probably during the most challenging time in the history of our party. COVID and conventions that were online. Talk to us a little bit about that. How challenging was that?
Well, it was really challenging, and it didn't have to be that bad. So, I think it's been pretty well documented now that actually, in the middle of March, I made a proposal to the LNC for start preparing technically for an online convention, and that was essentially shot down. I was told you're undermining the real convention by planning for a virtual convention, and so you can't do that. I had a proposal that did everything we needed to do, state of the art technology system for $10,000, which in retrospect seems like a bargain.
Yeah.
However, I was specifically told, don't do it. You are screwing it up, and this is not your job as the executive director. The LNC is in charge of this sort of thing. Don't do it. So I didn't. I mean, I submitted the plan to everybody on the LNC, and I felt like I had done the best I could do. I made them aware of what the problem was. And then when it became apparent that we were really going to have to do the virtual convention, essentially I was instructed by Nick Sarwark, who was then the chair of the party, and we had 10 days to prepare before the virtual convention. But there wasn't any point in, bitching about it. So I assembled a team that I called the Skunkworks team, saying, this is it. This is what we're going to have to do. And I need people who are going to help with solutions and not bitch about it. And I got an amazing team. First and foremost among those was Tyler Harris, the current executive director.
Yeah.
He was a guy who did an amazing job. People don't know that during the convention, he was the guy who was actually running through the room, making sure that only people who were credentialed were actually in the first Zoom convention and able to vote. And so all the time he's sitting there like bumping people out or checking them against their credentials list or anything like that. So that was a lot of work and thankless.
Constant vigilance.
Yeah, constant vigilance. And remember, because we had some people who dialed in. And so he had to either look up their phone number in Razor's Edge or try to figure out who they were or, listen, talk, stuff like that. Almost an impossible job. I got some great consultation from Ryan Graham, who is the chair, and I just saw a reelected chair of the Libertarian Party of Georgia. Devin Balkin. If people don't know who Devin is, you should find out. He ran for public advocate in New York City. His company sells a participatory democracy software that is currently being used in Taiwan, and I hope is going to be used in other places as well. And essentially what it is it has a way people validate who they are online, and then every piece of legislation that gets before the legislature, they get to vote on it, and the legislature see how everybody in their district voted on that legislation. Whoa. So it is really participatory democracy. And one of the amazing side effects, we talk about unintended consequences. One of the things that they didn't see happen is when Taiwan instituted this, people got so involved in government that their voter turnout is in the 80 percentile now. Because people are really into it. And so
they're more informed.
Exactly. When they feel like they're involved, they get more involved.
Yeah.
Amazing thing. So Devin was involved. Ken Molman helped out. Who else am I forgetting? It's funny because I got rid of the group at the, just like when I was leaving. Part of what I did was get rid of all the Slack groups that I created beforehand. So I'm probably forgetting some names, but a lot of people worked really hard on it. And one of the things that we knew is that we only have 10 days. So we can't use anything that doesn't exist. And we have to pick technology that we're very familiar with. And so we went with Zoom. It was like, we know Zoom. We've used it. We know that it has the voting capacity. And people who remember our trials, we tried webinar. We tried using a big room, but the room has a cap of 1,000 people. And so we couldn't use a room that had all the delegates and all the alternates in there.
Yeah. Because
with delegates and alternates, we're way over 1,000.
Yeah.
So, we tried to figure out what was the best thing. We ended up using a webinar. It wasn't perfect, but it got us done. We had the state chairs as presenters, so they had sort of pseudo moderator privileges. You were one as
Yeah.
the state chair of West Virginia, and it wasn't perfect, but with only 10 days to put it together, I was pretty happy that we were able to nominate a president.
Honestly, the issue with the online convention was not technical at all. It was personality driven.
Right.
That's all it was personality driven. Some people just didn't want to do it like that, and couldn't accept that we were doing it like that, and they tried to make it as hard as possible.
Right.
Um,
And, you're right. And then it was a very difficult thing. And so then, we pulled it off. And, however, we have the thing for the hybrid convention.
yes.
And so I say to my group, my Skunkworks group, TJ Valente, you're Valente,
Sure.
TJ Ferrara, all you Italian guys are the same to me.
Damn it.
TJ Ferrara was also critically involved in the first one. And so then in the second pass, I'm like, okay, guys, let's get together. Let's make sure that, just in case. Now, I don't care if the LNC says don't plan for hybrid. We're going to plan for hybrid just in case. And he said, TJ said to me, he's like, all right, Dan, I think it's a good idea, but, we should, he's like, it's probably easier to get this passed if you are not the face of it. And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine with that. No problem. But I will tell you, I invented the name Project Porcupine. But mostly I wasn't particularly involved with it. TJ wrote almost all of it. He had a team, stuff like that. He did a couple demos for us along the way. We made a couple things. And then a week beforehand, and remember, I'm not involved in this at all, right? I am staying away. The LNC, for whatever reason, doesn't want me to be involved in it. And so I am keeping hands off. A week before the convention starts, TJ's getting ready to start doing demos. I'm like, can I help you with the demos? If you train me, I can come into the demo and help with the demo. And he's like, yeah, absolutely. That would be great. And so I come in, and like any software demo, there's some things that aren't quite ready yet. And I'm like, I'll run the training. You keep coding. We're doing that. And so that's what we did. And if you were in any of the trainings that we did before the hybrid convention, you saw me doing the training.
Yeah.
TJ's still coding. And for whatever reason, I know what happened afterwards. We had some problems going into it. And the day beforehand, I thought to myself, just in case, this doesn't get worked, let's have a backup system ready to roll in just in case. And so that's what I did. I had the Election Buddy and Zoom and all that stuff ready to go, but I wasn't, I was not on the list of the guy who's going to be doing this stuff up until, the day of the convention. And then, but, I don't expect any particular accolades for it. That was my job. Yeah. My job as executive director is to be ready for anything. I cannot let the LNC fail. And so that is my job. And so I have to be prepared. I'm happy to say that I did my job. It's what you guys were paying me for. I am happy to have served in the capacity that I think I was particularly well suited for. We did the hybrid convention. I thought it went pretty well, all things considered. Sure. Alex Merced did an amazing job. And we got through it, and we elected a new chair, and, knock on wood, we'll never see that again in our lifetimes.
Oh, I know. I pray every day that Reno is going to be in person and flawless and
yeah, I think it will be.
We really didn't get a chance to talk about our new gig. We'll probably get to this on the after hours show when we go make the switch over, because we're kind of coming up against the end of the show, and I wanted to give you a chance to do some plugs for your stuff, because I know you do a lot of stuff, not just the People for Liberty stuff, but you're doing like the Power Hour lunches and all that stuff, the broadcast.
Yep. So the Liberty Lunch Power Hour actually is People for Liberty. So I'm broadcasting on their channel. But part of what we're doing, we want everybody. So if you are a Liberty content producer, we want you at People for Liberty because, it's in our name.
Yeah.
We're not just young Americans for liberty. We're not just students for liberty. We're not just women for liberty. We're not just black voters for liberty. We're the people for liberty. All of us, and you heard some of my stump speeches before. The promise of our country is that we are, I don't want to say, there's no more kings, no more princes, citizens, all of us together, people for liberty. That is the premise of our country. And I think most Americans know that intrinsically. They know in the back of their mind. I mean, there's some small-minded bigots here and there, but most Americans, I believe, fundamentally want everybody to have freedom. But they've been living with a situation where they have been conditioned by a government, by a society to believe that there has to be a government that takes care of them. There has to be a government to keep order. And of course, the person who's doing that conditioning is the government. They're teaching you that you can't take care of yourself, that you can't take care of your neighbors. They make laws that make it illegal to feed the homeless. They make laws that make it illegal for you to, grow your own medicine. They make it laws that make it illegal for you to, walk through a public park after dark. All these laws that restrict your liberty that don't make any sense at all, but are about power and about conditioning you to the fact that you shall obey. Because here we have this terrible situation, but a great scenario for government where they get to say to you, if you don't obey, you're going to die. We can't say you. Madison would say the public. We should give a shout out of Dolly Madison, though, for starting that Easter egg roll on the White House lawn.
There you go.
And those little cupcakes. But there's a truth that all of us fundamentally, we know what is right. I really believe that. And we know that what is right is liberty. And we also know, Ethan Bishop Henchman made an amazing post today talking about the fact that, and I'm not a religious person, but he's ordained minister, and he talked about the fact that in his religion, God loves you unconditionally, and no matter what you do, God won't love you any less, and he won't love you any more. He just loves you the maximum level. And what does that mean to you? And I said, well, I think what it means to me is that that's the model that I should emulate. There are people in my life who vex me. There is a woman I consider the libertarian daughter that I never had. And she's gone full-fledged Trumper. And, she posted the other day, like I posted something, she's like, Dan, the New York Times is not a credible news source. Neither is the Washington Post. Exactly. And I recognize that the thing that I need to do, being mad at her doesn't help. I have to find a way to love her more, because that's what we're about. We're about an organization of all of us being together and saying, you know what, we got to have this inner love for liberty, this inner love for ourselves enough that we let people do it. And that's what liberty is. People for liberty is the idea, right? If I don't love you, right, I don't trust you with a gun. I say, you know what? I'm not giving Valente a gun. I'm not giving him the thing. Giving you your rights is a matter of respect and a matter of love. And so libertarianism is the political expression of loving your neighbor. People of Liberty is founded on that idea, bringing us back to that idea that we can love each other.
Well, Dan, thank you so much. And join us over on the after hours show when we cut it a little bit looser on that one. But
I'll do the real shirt takeoff then.
Yeah. We'll pick up on some other issues where we talk about the bylaws committee and all that fun stuff. But thank you again for joining us. Again, peopleforliberty.org and the Facebook group, which is, I think, peopleforliberty.org or People for Liberty Inc.
Right. And that's affiliated with the Super PAC. We will probably someday have the People for Liberty on Facebook as well. That group has been abandoned since 2016. I was in it. I'll tell you on the other show.
All right. Well, hey, thanks everyone for joining us. Join us on the After Hours show, which will be beginning just a moment. And we'll talk to you guys next week when we talk about your Second Amendment rights. So join us then. Thank you for tuning in to the Political Deep Dive. We air live every Sunday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern. You can find me on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter at Papa Duke, P-A-P-A-D-U-K-E. Our Facebook group is the Political Deep Dive Podcast, all one word. We are now on Twitch at DT Valente, D-T-V-A-L-E-N-T-E. And on Mondays, a podcast of our live episode is uploaded to soundcloud.com/The Political Deep Dive. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next week.